Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at in the country. I want to thank everybody for joining today's session. As a quick housekeeping item, this presentation will be recorded and available on our website afterwards. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Jordan Parentelli, and I lead our healthcare education and life safety practice here at Guidepost Solutions. So today we're going to talk about something that I consistently see across K through 12 environments, and really that's the gap between having security technology in place and having a security program that actually works in real world conditions. So my goal here today is to give you a practical framework you can take back to your school or district to evaluate where your program truly stands and kind of where your exposure exists. Before diving into that technology, though, I really want to frame this discussion clearly. It's not about the products or adding more devices. Really, it's about alignment. And that's the alignment between the people, the processes, and the technology. When those three elements are not coordinated, even the most advanced systems can fail at the exact moments when you really need them most. So, security in K through 12 schools have become a core operational priority. Schools are facing increased safety expectations from parents, from staff, from communities, along with some additional regulatory pressures that now exist. At the same time, we must prepare for a wide range of incidences, from the typical day to day issues that arise to the rare but high impact events. What we consistently find in our assessments is that most schools believe that they have a security program, but in reality, they have a collection of systems that have been installed over time with really no shared operational logic connecting. A true program is defined not by the equipment installed, but by how risk is assessed and how decisions are made and how the systems support those decisions when you're under pressure. It's important to recognize that technology is really only one component of a much broader approach. A secure campus is built on the understanding of stakeholders' needs, reviewing past incidences, and really planning on how the school actually operates. Technology does not create security, people and processes do. Technology simply reinforces and enables those elements. Without training, without clear procedures, without alignment, even the best systems will not perform effectively in an emergency. All of these components come together to build a security program. That security plan should be dictating how students, how staff, and how faculty are interacting and responding to various security requirements and situations while leveraging those tools in place that are available to them. Without a well placed plan, the security program will fall short in some areas and thereby leave security gaps. So I want to talk about a moment to align on some of the core technologies that most districts are investing in today. Most K through 12 environments rely on four primary technology pillars. That's access control, video surveillance, visitor management, and emergency communication. Access control governs the entry and movement throughout the building. Video surveillance provides visibility and investigative capabilities. Emergency communications ensures that information can be distributed quickly during an incident. And visitor management controls and tracks who's entering into the school. While most schools have these systems, they're often deployed independently. The real value comes when these become integrated. When access control triggers video, video triggers alerts, and when those alerts drive communication and action. At its base level, access controls help providing a level of barrier and interaction that is required to pass through that barrier. These come in many forms, such as a key card, a mobile credential on your phone, biometrics, such as a fingerprint, or it could be through a remote release after talking to somebody on an intercom and you get verification that you're allowed to come into the school. These can then control door locks and entry gates and turnstiles and other controlled portals to gain access to that next level. We also see things like time-based scheduling where certain doors are unlocked during certain time periods, such as like during student arrival, you may have a 20-minute window when the main entry doors will be heavily staffed by faculty and thereby unlocked. We've also seen video surveillance reinventing itself year over year. And over the last 2 decades, we've seen the transition from analog to IP video. And now we're starting to see the transition from on premise video to cloud based video or some kind of hybrid approach. More importantly, we're seeing a massive uptick in the use and availability of video analytics and advanced artificial intelligence. These analytics are helping schools identify anomalies in real time instead of just using the system purely as an investigative tool post incident. While the video is helpful in post-incident investigations, it's even more powerful when it can be alerting security or staff while an incident is actually escalating or in real time, so immediate action and intervention can occur. Same thing with emergency communication. We have seen announcements that would traditionally be communicated via like the big voice public address system to being a more integrated and cohesive strategy of communication. A mass communication platform can integrate with the public address system, be sending out messages via email and text, and delivering messages to like things like digital clocks, bringing up messages on computers and televisions, really ensuring that the message is received by anyone on school grounds. From a visitor management platform, we've also gone from the traditional manual printed sign-in sheet, of which we see implemented in many school districts we assess, to a digital platform. These platforms can help provide real-time updates of how many visitors are in the building, who their sponsor is, what area of the building they're visiting. And it can also do things like screening against databases such as like the National Sex Offender Registry. All of these systems, though, need to be rooted in policy and part of a larger security plan in order to be effective. So with that in mind, let's examine where these systems typically will fall short. One of the most common and consistent findings that we find is not the software itself, it's the physical door. Issues like prop doors, misaligned frames, failed door closers, and malfunctioning locks undermine otherwise sophisticated systems. We also see shared credentials, delayed deactivation of access, limited door monitoring. These are some problems that can highlight a critical point. Access control really is only effective if the hardware and operational practices supporting it are reliable. So, what do you need to do? Having a plan in place to identify these types of issues, like regular maintenance of doors, validating door closers at different times throughout the year, ensuring the minimal use of unapproved entry and exit doors, and enforcing that behavior. All of this plays a big factor on the operation. Most staff and students will not challenge somebody attempting to tailgate into a school. Or worse yet, if someone is knocking on an exterior door, they'll go let them in. People are inherently nice. So it goes against the typical upbringing of being kind and holding a door open for somebody. But those are exactly the types of issues that can circumvent even the best security. So this is where implementing the proper training, reporting, and challenging protocols and techniques that when something like that's observed, it's critical for the success of a security program. Beyond technology, operational alignment is where we see most programs struggle. There's often unclear ownership of security responsibilities. We're seeing competing priorities between departments, inconsistent staff training, and really policies that are not being enforced. In many cases, staff are expected to respond to incidences with little or no practical training. Security ultimately depends on human decisions that are made under pressure, and those decisions are only as good as the training and structure supporting them. Although security falls on everyone, in many schools and districts, the security program typically falls on individuals that are wearing many hats, and they often lack the time and ability to develop and structure the security program properly. School administrators have different priorities depending on how the district or school is structured. You could have operations, student services, instruction, athletics, and other departments that all have competing interests that conflict and interact with security differently. Further, there is typically a lack of consistent drills, and a lot of times they don't go beyond the basic minimum that's required. This means that students and staff are not ready when an incident takes place. Many schools only do fire drills because it's mandated by the state. We've also seen many schools that are very well locked down with strict protocols in place during normal school hours. However, during after school events, the school opens up and those protocols become almost non existent. Especially after hours, we see more convenience over safety. Lastly, we see this all the time at schools. If there's a lack of accountability to students and staff on how to follow security protocols, then the behaviors will not be modified. For example, in a high school, we typically see many means of egress to the exterior, with some direct from classrooms, others from several hallways at grade level. However, the school may have designated only two or three of those as approved exits. At the end of certain periods, or when students are leaving at the end of the day, if doors besides those designated exit points are allowed to be used without consequence, then it will continue to be a security gap that will likely get worse over time. Therefore, the consistent application of consequences for following security requirements will help drive a more refined security program and culture. Even well designed systems also will degrade over time if they're not properly maintained. Common challenges include siloed platforms, outdated infrastructure, misconfigured alerts, and systems that are rarely tested. One of the greatest risks is false confidence, believing that those systems are going to work without verifying their performance. Security systems must be treated like life safety systems, with routine maintenance, testing, and continuous improvement. Additionally, if the systems are not set up for ease of use, or only one or limited staff know how to use the system, this can introduce delay and complications during an event, or even just during regular use. We have seen many schools, especially in like legacy districts that are going through significant security upgrades, dealing with aging telecommunications infrastructure that's properly not set up to manage like new things like ultra high definition camera screens or cloud based video management platforms or other bandwidth intense devices. Ensuring your security system is properly set up for the future will help validate that investment. Another major component of security system deployment is overall lifecycle management. Servers, cameras, edge devices, they all have a finite usable lifespan. If you are able to build out your lifecycle budgeting plan upon the inception of a new system, this can help budget and validate future expenditures down the road. Planning for replacement of servers in the 5 to 7 year range and cameras in the 7 to 10 year range, among others, is really a generally reasonable estimate. This can vary with some degree, though, depending on the use and capacity of devices. The more taxed the devices, the lower its lifespan is going to be. So, how do we address these challenges in a meaningful and sustainable way? Well, ultimately, the answer lies in adopting a layered security approach. This means implementing multiple overlapping security measures so that no single failure compromises the entire system. Physical controls, technologies, and procedures should all work together to create redundancy and resilience. If one layer fails, another should compensate. The more layers you can introduce to your protected assets, the more delay you introduce to an aggressor. You want to look at it from the perspective of how do you deter an aggressor from even initially wanting to target your school? If the task appears to be too difficult to succeed, you can thwart an issue before it becomes one. Then the next step is to detect an aggressor. This allows the school to identify and implement procedures that are needed to further delay an aggressor and initiate a response protocol. Then you want to delay that aggressor as much as possible. The layers of control through policy, procedure, and physical boundaries all play together to delay an aggressor by making them go through additional hurdles to reach their target. The ultimate goal is then to deny the aggressor from reaching their target while the response is implemented. Now, this is where you want to start to bring everything together because design is where most of the programs either become aligned or permanently fragmented. And I want to walk through this in a practical way because these are not abstract concepts. These are the exact points where we see programs either succeed or fail. Effective design begins with interoperability, choosing systems that can integrate and communicate. But it requires building policies first, then selecting technology to support those policies. It also requires aligning staffing and training based on the system complexity. It's also important to plan for scalability and future growth. Security must balance safety with the student experience, ensuring environments are welcoming while still being protected. So, one of the first things that we like to do is talk about creating a master plan. Most districts don't have a mature security program. What they have is a series of projects: a camera project, an access control upgrade project, a visitor management rollout. But these are not connected by a long term vision. A master plan can change that. It will start to answer questions like, what are we trying to achieve operationally? What does our end state look like? And how do we get there over time with the resources that we have? Because the reality is, you're not going to fix everything in a single budget cycle. So instead of reacting, you're starting to build toward a defined architecture. And that's really how mature security programs operate. But you need to create policies first, then technology. That might be the most important thing on this slide. Technology should never define your processes. Your processes should define your technology. Too often, districts install a system, then figure out, how am I going to use it? Instead, you should be starting with, what needs to happen in an emergency, who's responsible for what, and what decisions need to be made and how quickly. Then you can start to map out those workflows. And then you start to deploy technology that will support them. And when you do that well, you have clearly defined roles, you have permissions that are clearly assigned, you have systems that are going to reinforce, not complicate operations. You also want to make sure that you're not locking yourself into closed proprietary systems. At the time of purchase, it might seem simpler to go into a proprietary system. It might even seem more cost effective. But what can happen over time is you can't integrate additional systems, you can't expand without replacing some of the existing infrastructure, and you end up with siloed platforms that don't communicate. And when the systems don't communicate, you have people that need to fill that gap manually. And this is typically where the failure is going to occur. So the design principle that we would recommend here is simple. Your systems should talk to each other because your staff should not be serving as that integration layer. That also gets to aligning staffing and your operational capacity, because that's one of the most overlooked often. We routinely see districts install systems that are far more complex than their teams are prepared to operate. And as you can imagine, the results are somewhat predictable. Alerts are ignored, the systems are underutilized, you have features that go unused, and staff revert to manual workarounds. So there's a key question that every district should ask. Do we have the people, the training, and the time that's required to operate what we've installed under pressure? Because if the answer is no, then the system is not aligned with your program. And good design is not about maximum capability, it's about appropriate, sustainable capability. I want to also emphasize that, building in cybersecurity from the start is a critical component. Security technology today is a network connected technology. That means every camera, every access control panel, every cloud platform, it's all part of your cyber risk profile. And we're seeing an increased overlap between physical security and IT, but often those two teams are not always aligned. So cybersecurity cannot be an afterthought. Lastly, I want to talk about how you balance student safety or safety with the student experience. The goal here is not to create hardened environments that feel unwelcoming or restrictive. The goal is to create spaces that are safe, functional, and supportive of learning. And a lot of times this starts with something as simple as the front entry. A well designed front entry should be controlled, clearly defined, and still welcoming. Not confusing, not intimidating. It's about intentional design, not adding layers of restriction. And beyond design, it's also about culture. A strong security program builds upon culture where staff understand their role, students understand the expectations, and safety becomes a part of the environment, not an interruption to it. So, a successful program follows a structured roadmap. This is what master planning processes can look like. It starts with a realistic assessment of the current conditions, followed by identifying both technical and operational gaps. From there, schools and districts should develop a phased master plan. You want to align your resources accordingly, implement those improvements, and continuously train and test those systems. Security is not a one time project, it's an ongoing process. And proper planning can help ensure that those long term objectives are able to be met within those budgetary cycles. So, looking ahead, technology continues to evolve rapidly. and it's constantly introducing new capabilities and opportunities. Some of the emerging trends that we're seeing include AI-driven video analytics, unified access control systems, cloud-based platforms, and automated workflows. These technologies can significantly enhance situational awareness and response. However, they only provide value when built on a solid operational foundation. Advanced tools cannot compensate for basic failures in hardware, training, or policy. So, the biggest shift that we've been seeing as of late is in AI video. This goes far beyond just recording footage. We're talking about systems that now have the capabilities to detect unusual behavior, identify objects or movement patterns, generate real time alerts, and even prioritize specific events for review. From a capability standpoint, this is a major advancement. But here's the reality: if your team is already overwhelmed, if alerts are already being ignored, adding more intelligence without refining your workflows can actually make things worse because now you're creating more data, more alerts, and more noise without improving the response. So one of the key questions becomes, what will you be doing differently because of this technology? If you can't answer that question operationally, then the value is not going to be recognized. We're also seeing emergency communication is evolving quite a bit. We're moving beyond those basic public address systems to really multi-channel mass communication and mass notification systems. You're getting mobile alerts, you have smart devices, you have integrated panic systems, and we're adding E911 capabilities. This creates the ability to communicate faster and more broadly than we ever have in the past. But during an emergency, clarity is going to matter more than capability. If you're delivering messages that are confusing, inconsistent, or they're not aligned with what procedures have been put in place, then the speed is not going to help. It actually creates more chaos. So again, the focus there should be on predefined messaging, clear workflows, and alignment with training and drills. We're also seeing a shift towards going to a single pane of glass. The idea there is kind of simple. It's one interface, one platform, and it gives you a unified view of your entire security environment. Conceptually, it's very powerful because during an incident, you don't want staff switching between 5 different systems trying to understand what's happening. But the effectiveness of this approach depends entirely on the integration quality. If the underlying systems are not properly connected, you're just aggregating fragmented information into one place, which can create more issues. We're also seeing a shift towards cloud and hybrid environments. And while these offer greater flexibility, easier remote access, and easier updates, there's also potential considerations like network dependencies, cybersecurity risks, how those systems are going to be governed from a data standpoint, and also what the long term cost structures look like. So while the cloud can be valuable, it also needs to be evaluated as part of a broader architecture, not just a convenience decision. Lastly, we're seeing automation and event-driven workflows that are becoming very impactful. Automation allows a system to respond dynamically to specific events. For example, a door forced open can trigger video recording. The video will trigger an alert. The alert can trigger a lockdown or a notification. And what this does is it reduces the reliance on manual intervention and it speeds up those response times. But here's the key: automation must be designed carefully. If the workflows are unclear or incorrect, now you're automating the wrong response. So again, it comes back to what are the defined processes? Have we tested those scenarios? And do we have alignment on the execution? Lastly, we're also seeing smart buildings, the Internet of Things, and edge devices becoming much part of the broader smart building ecosystem. These are all contributing to situational awareness, but it also opens the door to more proactive security strategies. But that also brings more complexity and the number of potential failure points that could exist. So this is where integration, maintenance, and governance becomes even more critical. So to summarize, a successful security program really depends on 3 elements: people, processes, and technology. People are the most critical factor, and they're often the greatest vulnerability. Processes must be clear, practiced, and enforced. Technology supports and enables these environment or elements, but it does not replace them. When components are aligned, organizations can achieve a layered, integrated, and practical approach to safety. I'm going to leave you with one final perspective because this is what we see consistently across almost every assessment in every district and every school that we've been involved in. Security does not fail because of a lack of technology. It fails because of a lack of alignment. Alignment between what are your systems capable of, what do your policies require, and what your people are actually prepared to do in the moment. And if there's one thing to keep in mind, is this. In the first 60 seconds of an incident, no one is reading a manual, no one is calling a vendor, and no one is troubleshooting a system. They are acting based on the training they've received, the clarity of their role, and how intuitive your systems are under pressure. So when you go back to your school or district, I would challenge you to think about your program differently, not as a list of technologies, but as a system of decisions. Ask yourself, do our staff know what to do without hesitation? Do our systems support those decisions or slow them down? And have we actually tested what we believe is going to work? Because at the end of the day, people are your most important asset, but they're also your biggest vulnerability. Processes are what give structure and consistency to decision making, and technology is what enables speed, visibility, and coordination. But none of those matter on their own. A security program only works when people, processes, and technology are fully aligned and proven under real world conditions. And the districts that get this right aren't necessarily the ones that spend the most. They're the ones that are able to ask the right questions, focus on the fundamentals, and build programs that actually perform, not just exist. And that's the difference between feeling secure and actually being prepared. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend this webinar today. If there's one takeaway, like I mentioned on the last slide, do not measure your program by what's been installed. Measure it by what will work in the first 60 seconds of an incident. I appreciate your attention and welcome any questions at this point. All right. Well, I thank everybody for taking the time today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a great holiday week. Thank you.